Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. My old boss that lets me use the Junkyard shop got a new Jeep. So this is a diesel Jeep and it's having a little issue. So what I'm doing is actually gonna fix it for him. It's not a very hard fix. What's really going on is he'll drive it and then when you come up to a stop sign or you start it, it'll just die. He sprays some ether in it and it fires right back up. So what's happening is the same thing that happens to the Volkswagens, the 1.9s, is the intake manifolds just can get completely sooted until they almost close themselves off. So what's happening is it's starving itself for air. And I've already verified this by pulling the pipe coming from the intercooler and looking in there with my phone camera. So it's pretty much just all the way, like right here, this elbow goes up to this intake manifold and it's pretty much just all the way clogged. And it's actually very surprising that it's still running. So this intake manifold, I actually have to pull a lot of this stuff apart to get it off. It looks like it's also part of the valve cover right here as well. I've never actually pulled one of these intake manifolds or even worked on one of these before. But it's pretty much the same as anything. You pull bolts out, you pull stuff apart, put it back in the same order that you pulled it apart in. So let's get this thing apart. And then once I get the intake manifold off, the trick to getting all of the soot out of it, because it's really, it's like tarry. So you can't brake clean it out because you'll use a lot of brake cleaner and you'll never get it all out. How you go about cleaning the intake manifold is actually you burn it out. So it's the same theory behind how the 6.4 uses the DPF. It uses extra fuel to superheat that DPF to turn that tar into ash, and then it just blows out the exhaust. So let's get this intake manifold off. We're probably gonna have to pull the fuel system off, it looks like. It's probably gonna be pretty involved. Remove the throttle body and the elbow. As you can see down there, that pipe is for the EGR recirculation, and then we have the elbow right here. So the throttle body actually didn't look too bad. They probably pulled it off and cleaned it. Probably thought that was one of the issues with it. But if you look in here, man, that was kind of staticky. You can see that it does have some buildup. And if the buildup is that bad in this, it's probably pretty decent inside the engine. So, or not inside the engine, but inside the intake manifold, because the runners, they pretty much taper off. So looks like what I'm gonna have to do is pull, I think this is part of, like the whole valve cover is one piece, including the intake manifold, which is kind of disappointing because I really don't wanna have to pull all that. But yeah, we're gonna have to get all that off of there just so we can look inside of it and make sure it's nice and clean. Because if we have any issues where there is a clogged port, or they are starting to get clogged where it's not letting enough air go into the engine, that could be that is what I think the issue is. But looking at that elbow and it already being so clogged up, it isn't as bad as what you would see from a Volkswagen TDI, but it definitely is substantial. I'm working on the Jeep, have a little bit of bad news. So I've really wanted to get one of these for a long time. I really like the idea of a 4-cylinder Jeep. It's 4-wheel drive, but the fact is the design on this thing is very poorly executed. So the thing about it is, on Volkswagens, you can pull the intake manifold, burn them out really easy. It takes about 30 minutes to do. Well, it depends on how much soot is in there. Sometimes it takes like an hour to burn it out. But this, it's you pretty much have to tear everything down. So I have to pull the radiator out. I also have to pull the alternator off. I have to pull all this stuff, drain the coolant. So the intake manifold is part of the upper valve cover, which is also the thing that holds the cams in. So you need, like the Volkswagens, you need a tool to do the cam. You have to line the injection pump, all that fun stuff, but you don't have to do it to do the intake manifold on Volkswagens. This, you have to take apart everything just to get that off, and I stuck like a blade up in there. So it seems like the only thing it's running off of, and it was almost like stuffing it into like some jelly or jam, because the front 2 cylinders seem like they're 100% clogged. So these two up here, so the intake comes in from the back here. So when I push it this way, it's almost like trying to push it against, like through jelly. When I go back, it's not as bad. It's like it's not like I'm pushing through a substance. It's just like I'm, on the sides, there's some stuff that it's probably dragging on, but there's a path. So I think this thing is actually just running on 2 cylinders. And that's why when you come to a stop sign or you start it up and then just instantly dies, because it's only really running on 2 cylinders. It might be barely running on the front two, but it's just unfortunate because I thought this was going to be a very easy thing to do. And just looking at how this looks, so this has been meticulously maintained by the previous owner that my boss got it from, my old boss got it from, and it seems like whoever he was having maintain it, they did a really good job cleaning the throttle body because they thought that was probably the issue, but they didn't clean any of this other stuff, which if you have the EGR, and that's really one reason I like to delete EGR off of stuff, because it just destroys engines. It really does. And the benefits of EGR is really minimal to what it does to engines. It just pretty much destroys them. Timing tools came in for the Jeep today, and I got everything apart. So I didn't record any of this. It really wasn't that important, but there are a few bolts on this cover. The idlers, all the idlers are reverse thread, so you tighten to loosen. So the 2 idlers for the timing belt and the 2 idlers for the serpentine belt are reverse thread. So this intake manifold slash the cam cover slash the valve cover isn't as clogged as I thought it was. It is definitely clogged. You can definitely see that there's buildup right there. So the intake manifold isn't the biggest concern now. So it will get cleaned, so will that elbow. But if you look in this first one, it's completely, I don't even think I could show it to you, but that one's completely shut off. And I really can't see further down in these. Let's try to get a light behind it. I don't know how I'm going to show you guys down in there because I don't have a good light, but yeah, this first one is completely closed off. So there's nothing getting in there. Usually on the Volkswagen intake manifolds, I just burn them out. You just light this tarry, diesely, oily, sticky stuff in the intake manifold on fire, and then it just continues to burn until it's all burnt out. The issue with doing that is the intake manifolds on the Volkswagen, I've never warped one, but it is possible. Also, this holds the cams and it's the valve cover and all that stuff. So I don't want to burn it out of this because I don't want to have an issue with the, with any warpage or anything like that going on, anything crazy. There's 2 locking pins. There's one there and then one on the other side that holds the cams in place or in time. The only thing that doesn't have a locking pin is the injection pump. So I did look for a write-up on the timing of this, and I'm not sure if my injection pump is off because there's a notch right there, and the other guy that was timing his, he locked all the pins in there. There's one on the back of the engine block and then the 2 for the cams, but his mark was down here. So I'm not sure, and there's no markings on any of these cases to know if it's, if I'm in time or if the injection pump's out of time. I'm not sure, but I think it's because that the intake, those 2 intake ports are completely clogged in the head, not the intake manifold. The intake manifold is quite clogged with that crap, but the intake manifold is now being cleaned. What I ended up doing, instead of taking this to be hot tanked, I decided, since I didn't want to have to put new cam seals in it, I didn't want to have to remove the cams, I used oven cleaner. So the intake manifold, it's flipped upside down, as you can see, but it's filled with oven cleaner. So this overnight should pretty much get rid of all of that tar. It's pretty much just grease is what it is. So that's what oven cleaner is really good at doing, is getting rid of grease and baked on and hardened on grease. So this tomorrow should be brand new. Also tomorrow, I didn't bring one today, or I would have agitated it a little bit, but I need to bring a pipe brush. They're like a flexible rod with a brush on the head. Usually people use them to clean guns and stuff, but the head, I did kind of the same thing. I ran out of carbon choke cleaner. I didn't want to use the oven cleaner on the engine just because it's oven cleaner. So I have 3 of the ports filled up with it, and it should do the same thing. So tomorrow I'll get the rest filled up, and we'll just kind of agitate it with that pipe brush, and then I'll just suck it out with a vacuum and then just kind of spray it out. But those 3 look really good. They're not, none of it's leaked out. It's been sitting in there for like an hour. So I know those 3 valve seats are good to go. So tomorrow we'll continue on this and just kind of go from there. But I just can't wait to get this thing back together. Hopefully we find that that was one of the big issues. And a lot of people have been saying that the timing on the injection pump doesn't matter, but this injection pump was out of time, actually quite a ways out of time. So it's pretty close to where it should be now. You can see that notch right there, but it was all the way down there. So I'm not sure if that contributes to the issue that my boss was having with it just dying at stop signs and, you know, having this weird random stalling issue, and then it wouldn't start, but he could spray it with ether and it restarts. So the ports were very clogged. The timing belt was very old and needed to be replaced. So this is just kind of preventative maintenance, because if you do break a timing belt or snap a timing belt, it destroys everything. So, and since these are pretty rare, these 2.8 diesels, it's kind of hard to find heads for them if that ended up happening, or a bottom end. If the valves hit, usually it messes up the pistons in these ones. Finished getting the top of the engine all cleaned up, and as you can see right there, the ports are pretty clean. They're about like 97% cleaned. Without pulling the head and hot tanking it, it's almost impossible, because the ones on the far side are pretty much they go all the way over to right here, and these ones pretty much just go right there. So these ones are a little bit easier, those ones are a little bit harder, but you can do it. So I have this clean, I have the intake manifold clean, I have the elbow right there cleaned up, and the only thing I haven't cleaned yet is the EGR tube. I didn't think it was as plugged up as it was or is, and I need to pull it off really quick, clean that up. But it's been about 3 weeks because I've been waiting for this valve cover gasket. So I have the valve cover gasket now. I probably could reuse the old one, but I don't like reusing gaskets. So what I'm gonna do now, throw some oil on the top, because I just brake cleaned all this off, and then I'm gonna put the lifters, or put the valve cover gasket back on, then the lifters back in, and then put the valve cover / cam cap / intake manifold back on. Pretty happy with how clean the intake manifold is. They're not 100%, but without running them through a hot tank, it's very, very difficult to get all that stuff out. And I don't want to, like I said before, I don't want to burn it out, because I'm afraid that it's going to warp something. Since I'm doing the timing, I'm doing the water pump. So I just pulled the water pump off. The old water pump is actually a plastic impeller. The new one is, it looks like a brass impeller. So I'm going to put this on, but this was on there as well. Looks like another auxiliary water pump for something. I'm not too sure about these Liberties, but it has a clutch and everything. So this bolts onto that and hooks into 2 lines, and there's coolant in it. So you have to, I don't know if you have to, but it was just a lot easier to pull this before I pulled that, because then you could line all the O-rings up and just kind of go from there. So the kit comes with new O-rings, and I actually don't know what this one's for. So probably for the tube if you pull it all the way off, but I'm not going to pull it all the way off because it's not leaking. So I'll just put this outer O-ring on there. The Liberty is now timed. I want to go over a few things with the timing that I couldn't find. So the one thing about the timing is there are marks on the cams here and there, but there is no actual marks on the cover. The only mark on the cover is for the injection pump. I think this is a CP33, so it technically doesn't need to be timed, but I did line it up and time it, but I turned it over a few times and it now is not in time. So the only thing I did was I did these marks here. I did mark the injection pump, and then I marked the crank down there. You can see all 3 of those marks are still lined up, and the crank mark down there. And you really can't see that one down there. Here, let's shine. Oh no, that's the tensioner. So you can see that one's lined up. So what I had issues with, so These are coned, and you can see the previous marks from somebody timing it. This does have 200,000 miles. They just did it like a level mark, which when you pull these off, there is actually some keyways, but these are not keyed. So the keyways face each other. There are pins, which I just put the plugs back in. So you pin the whole engine before you pull the old belt off of it. And then you really don't need to put any marks on it, technically. But I do it just to make sure that everything lines up. And another thing I couldn't find was the torque specs. So the torque specs on these are pretty hard to find. Since these are coned, you want to make sure they're torqued. These ones right here are 80 foot-pounds. These two down here are reverse thread. So make sure that when you take them off, you don't try to break them loose because you're actually tightening them. So you have to go right to loosen, left to tighten. And these are 35 foot-pounds a piece. And the tensioner nut is 22 foot-pounds. So now that all this is back together, I'm going to start putting the fuel injectors and the fuel rail back on. And what I did was I ordered new copper washers and O-rings. It's a pretty good practice to do that because those ones, they've been in there for who knows how long, and it was already looking pretty oily when I pulled them out. So, you know, $100, make sure you don't have any leaks there, is a very good idea. So I'm going to throw those in, put these new O-rings and washers on there, and then we can get the wiring harness back on here, the PCV thing back on there. I can get the intake elbow and the throttle body and the EGR, because I'm going to leave the EGR. My boss didn't want to delete that, so we'll put that back on and just get all this back together. And since I did turn it over by hand, I know it's not gonna hit any valves. And another good thing is to turn it over with a smaller wrench. I use this wrench right here. If you go in there and use a big breaker bar, you could actually push it past the valve and not really even notice it. You'll just be like, oh, that's a little bit of compression resistance. Also, another thing, you don't have to do it, but it's nice to spin the engine over with the injectors out, because then you're not pushing past the compression, and you don't have to worry about, you know, is that a valve, is that compression, until you hear it go through the exhaust or through the intake. Liberty all back together, and what I'm going to do now is start it to bleed the cooling system. I've already started it to make sure it was good when the timing belt was all exposed, just to make sure that there wasn't a timing issue. So I checked it after I started it and made sure it ran. But let's start her up, bleed the coolant, and hopefully this thing doesn't do what it did before. It was pretty much just, I guess, turning off when you came up to a stop sign sometimes. I never experienced it, but that's what my boss said was happening. Let's see if she starts up. So we're gonna let the coolant system bleed, and I think it may need a map sensor, because I cleaned out the map sensor, but it was an IAT / map sensor, so I might have damaged the element. I'm not exactly sure, but it runs. So let's let her heat up and bleed the coolant. But now she rolls some coal. So it might be a bad IAT too. Coolant went down a little bit. I'm gonna add some more, so I needed to add a little bit more water. Should be about the right amount. The old Boss's Liberty now runs and drives. Timing's all done on it. The one thing that it still needs is, when I cleaned the intake manifold, the map sensor was very dirty. So it's a map sensor / an intake air temp sensor. And I was kind of poking around in there. I think I messed up. So I went and drove this thing. Seems like it has kind of low power. So that's the only thing I could think of. I'll change the fuel filter and the map sensor, but other than that, everything else is good to go. Runs and drives really nice. But I'm gonna end the video here. I'm really happy that this is now done. It took a little bit of time because of just ordering parts and cleaning the intake manifold. The intake manifold was very disgusting, but I'm really happy that it's done. Now he can have a good Liberty to drive. So if you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, give a thumbs up, throw a comment below. As always, see you guys next time.